Age of the Primes, Micronus Prime was one of the 13 where I was really interested to see how he turned out, because his character designs previously haven't really been the most toy-friendly. I always thought the design in the Covenant of Primus with the force field was really cool, but they can't really translate that, so it was more likely that they'd do the RID 2015 design, but when we saw the figure, I realized that they've kind of melded the two, taking the minicon mode from RID and placing it into a shield of some sort that would make it a more functional figure. But now that I have him in hand, has that really paid off? Well, let's take a look at him and find out. And starting off with the armored mode, this is pretty charming. The sculpted detail and proportions on this guy are pretty fun. He's very squat and wide, which gives him some really nice substance and hand feel, while also not needing him to be too tall. Even in the armored mode, he's not much taller than the average minibot. And I think that works really well for him thematically. Both being physically and proportionately squat, they just really help this guy stand out against the other primes. And the proportions aside, the sculpt of this mode is pretty great too. I do think the arms are a little bit soft. The light green plastic doesn't really take to the sculpting too well, but everything else, the rounded details on the shins and all of that lovely detail on the torso that lets you see through to the minicon inside, I really enjoy it. Even the head sculpt, it has a little bit of personality behind it, but it is still a little bit generic, and I think that really helps for a mech suit type look. I do really enjoy the sculpting of this mech suit mode. The only thing I'm not too hot on are the hands. I know they're largely meant to look like exhaust ports or guns, but I don't know, I maybe would have appreciated some finger articulation or just something, rather that than wrists, to be honest, because the straight out look just looks a little bit strange to me. But that aside, yeah, he looks great. And the colors really take it up a notch. I love how vibrant these are. The various shades here just come together really nicely. The tealy green for the arms and the head, and then the much darker one for the torso, contrasting really nicely with the black for the legs. It's a really simple but nice palette. And while this mode is incredibly light on the painted detail, the silver accents do add a nice little bit of pop, and they're very cleanly applied. From a purely visual standpoint, I really appreciate the look of this guy, but unfortunately, I feel that he falls behind a little bit in the playability department, which is surprising for how much he does. Accessory wise, unless you're counting the armor feature, which we've been looking at for most of the video, then he just comes with this little disc, which is apparently the Chimera Stone, which I don't know what any of the Prime artifacts do. I'm not interested in the lore, I'm interested in the toys. Maybe let me know what it does down in the comments. I suppose for what it is, the clear plastic has a nice look about it, and it has some decent sculpting on there. It looks like a fan. And you can't really do anything with it apart from just store it in the armored mode's chest, which kind of makes it look like the Apex armor from Prime. But that's pretty much it for accessories in this mode, and the posability isn't too much better. The head is on a ball joint, but it's quite limited, and it's very difficult to get to because of the housing that it's in. The shoulders move out pretty standardly, and they can go forward and back, but they can't really go all the way around just because of the back kibble. There's bicep swivels, standard elbows, wrist swivels, nothing at the waist. The hips can kick out, forward, and back fairly well. There's thigh swivels, pretty deep knees, and good ankle pivots. Look, the posing here is fine. It's nothing amazing, but it's not bad either. There's just a couple of factors that limit how dynamic or expressive it can be. The limited head and the lack of a waist swivel aren't really the worst things in the world considering the other things that this mod does, but it's other factors that are causing the problems here, like the short legs. They carry a really nice vibe, but they are extremely limited for how you can pose him, and the hands. Once again, I wish he had finger articulation. They are very limiting to what you can do. And despite the very large feet, which you think would give him a pretty stable base, he's incredibly top heavy, so in a lot of poses he really struggles to stand. At the very least he's solid, but the armored mode isn't the most fun to mess with. But you do have a lot more you can do with this guy. Unfortunately. If you open up the chest to the armored mode, you get access to this clear plastic disc, which on my copy doesn't really plug together at the bottom, which if yours doesn't, don't try and force it together, trust me. Although if you ignore that gap, it does have some pretty nice painted and sculpting, replicating the minicon symbol from Armada. And if you very f***ing carefully unfold this thing, you get access to Micronus Prime himself. Just the minicon. And visually, this guy's pretty good. He's a very chunky little figure. He's just as round as the disc mode, and he has some really nice sculpted detail across him. Residual detail from the minicon crest, as well as those sculpted feet, and that really nice head sculpt for the size. There's only one major downside to this guy. Why the f*** are all of the limbs made of clear plastic? This guy mostly does small scale clear plastic right. The torso itself, the shoulders, the thighs, they're all made of solid plastic, but to keep up the appearance of the all clear disc, the forearms and the shins are made of clear plastic, and it is not very solid. The forearms I have no problems with. There's barely any stress on them, it's a very thick plastic, I've got no worries about them breaking, but the shins were stressed out of the box and cracked the first time I bent them. On both knees. The housings for the ball joints on the knees really need needed to be solid plastic inserts inside of it. There's real estate to do it, but they just didn't. It's very frustrating, because the posability on this guy for the size is alright. The head, the shoulders, the elbows, and the knees are all on ball joints, and then the hips are on universals, so he can get into a lot of poses. And the sculpt is just dynamic enough to make them work, but I don't know. I think after this review I'm never touching this piece again, because it's just not worth it. Although I do appreciate that with a little bit of mistransformation, he does look like he's piloting the mech suit. But that's not all the suit can do when it's not occupied, because it can split up into a few pieces and transform ever so slightly just in the legs and the torso in order to become a handful of accessories. That's right, this guy's a weaponizer. But the weaponizing capabilities of it aren't exactly fantastic. You can mount the arms as little guns, which, considering how little they look like hands, does kind of work. You turn the legs into a wheel, which can be used as a shield, and then the torso just kind of wraps around the back of any figure that can actually take it. Not the best integration in the world, but it is serviceable. However, out of the primes that do weaponize, I don't think this guy's doing it the best. Especially with how poorly they want you to attach the backpack in the instructions. Not fantastic. But then combining the already transformed weaponizer parts back together, you do get this pretty neat bike mode, for which you have a couple of tabs on the seat and a couple of posts on the top half in order to plug Micronus on top of it, at which point I do find that despite the singular wheel, there is a sweet spot where you can balance it out. And conceptually, I really appreciate this alt mode, but practically, not overly impressed. I mean, not only does it integrate with the minicom, which is just continuing to stress me out, but the prospect of a single-wheeled bike is pretty visually striking, but aside from getting it to that one balancing point, which isn't exactly easy, you can't really do anything with it. If you try and roll it along, it'll do so, but it'll lean back and the arms will drag behind it, unless you want to point down the elbows, but at that point, it completely loses its dynamicism. It just needed a bipod or something so it could stand a little bit more freely, but in this form, I feel that this toy is a bit underbaked. There's lots of things I like. The visual aspects of all three modes are really striking. He might not be the most unique prime in terms of sculpting, but conceptually he is up there and he stands apart from the rest really nicely, the way that I wish Alchemist did. And not only that, but seeing the 9 out of the 13 primes that we already have is really exciting. And this guy stands with them really well. It's just, playability wise, I didn't really want to end this year on such a sour note. And if I was to recommend this guy for the toy that he is, I'd just say be very cautious of the clear plastic elements. But that's just me, and if you agree with that, then please leave a like, or if you disagree, then leave a comment, tell me what you think of this guy. And be sure to subscribe for the next one. At the time of recording, I've got a couple of things scheduled to come in, but if they're not on time, then I have a funny feeling the retro minibot craze might get to me. But if you want to catch whatever the next video is early, then my Patreon is always an option, where you get early access, photo galleries, you name in the credits, the whole works. Right now though, I've got to go make some bolognese. I've got some guests coming over for something a little bit special around Christmas time. Keep an eye. Anyway, ciao.